So the story of Parshat Yitro is that Yitro arrives where the Jews are encamped. He brings along he's Moshe's father-in-law. We knew that. He brings along the rest of Moshe's family. He's treated in the greatest, grandest style. He's fed. He's taken care of. Moshe bows down to him. He's given a grand tour of the Jewish people and everything. And he gives advice. Yitro gives advice to Moshe about a way to make it easier for himself and for the Jewish people to receive laws, to pass over the laws, because that's what we're going to be doing. We need to do this correctly, and it needs to be done well. And in Yitro's professional perspective, because he's been teaching people Torah, he's been teaching people the right things to do, and so or what he thought was the right things to do, and so he has quite a bit of experience, and he thinks that what Moshe is doing is not correct. Moshe takes his advice, and therefore he creates these systems of laws, of a system of courts, a whole judicial system of greater courts, lower courts, etc. Then the Jewish people are brought to Har Sinai, and at Har Sinai there's a list of laws they're given about what not to do in regard to the mountain, to give it sort of respect. And the Jews are offered the Torah, and they of course say Nasa v'nishma. They say they're going, and this is actually a little tidbit, and most people don't know. The phrase Nasa v'nishma is in next week's parsha, is in Mishpatim. But anyway, because part of the giving of the Torah is in the end of next week's parsha. Little known fact. Try to pass that information around at your next dinner party. So the Jewish people accept the Torah. They're given the 10 commandments by Moshe, and those 10 commandments, as we're going to see, are indeed the core of the 613 mitzvot. We don't just have 10 laws; we have 10 core laws that sort of hint to a much greater legal system, ethical system, moral system that is true for all time. And that's what happens at Kabbalat Torah. And there's a lot of details which we're sort of skipping over for reasons. A lot of it's not given in the parsha itself. A lot of it is told over when this is repeated in Sefer Devarim. And we learned about that last year. And every year, Shavuot time, we sort of review sort of the details of how the Jews received the Torah. And so we'll get to that when we get to that. Meanwhile, what I'd like to do today, as usual, I'd like to get into the psukim in depth with some commentaries from all over the Jewish world, from all over Jewish history. We're going to have, interestingly enough, 2 comments today from the Ibn Ezra. We'll see a little bit of the Kuzri. We'll see some Michtav Me'Eliyahu. We're going to just go all over the place. The Chidah. We're just going to throw everything together to try to explain the Parsha as best we can in a way that's hopefully inspirational to you and also insightful. And that's our goal here in our Parsha classes. Okay, so let's begin. Let's begin at the beginning. Let's share the screen so we can see what we're talking about. Just a moment before we do that. Okay, let's share the screen like so. Haha, it worked. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay, the parsha begins. It's called Yitro because it's named after Moshe's father-in-law, who joins the Jewish people. And the big question that everybody deals with, every single major commentary grapples with this issue: why did he join the Jewish people? What exactly happened? Now, you might think, hey, listen, we've been learning the last few parshiot. We know what happened. The 10 plagues, the Jews miraculously leave Egypt, they're given manna, the sea is split, not in that order, the sea is split, they're given manna, they defeat Amalek, a lot of things, a lot of miracles that are given. There's a well of water that travels along with the Jewish people everywhere they go. Now, maybe that's what inspired him. So let's see. That's not what Rashi says, which is strange because before we even look into the psukim, let's remember what Rashi's purpose is in writing his commentary. He stated that his purpose in writing the commentary is the pashut pshat, to give the simple explanation. Now, when I give you his explanation for this, I want you to pause and think, and I'll remind you then too, is this the simple explanation? Because what I thought, what I just said, might be the explanation, but let's see. Vishma Yitro Kohen Midyan, and the Yitro, who is the priest of Midyan, heard Choten Moshe. He happens to also be the father-in-law of Moshe. Et kol asher asa Elokim leMoshe u'Yisrael, everything that Hashem did to Moshe and Yisrael, Amo, his nation, ki hotzi Hashem et Yisrael mimitzrayim, because Hashem took them out of Egypt. And again, the question is, what did he hear? So it says he heard everything Hashem did. So, like I said, I think the simple explanation would be he heard everything. Everything is everything. And that includes the 10 plagues and everything that we learned about in the last few parshiot. So why is it that Rashi says what he's about to say? Rashi says, Vishma Yitro says short Rashi. Ma shmua shemauva. What is it that he heard and came? Because, he came. Not everybody did. Other people must have heard too. He heard it from somewhere. He read it on the news. Why didn't all the reporters come? Why wasn't everybody just jumping at the opportunity to come see the Jews at this point? Historically speaking, the great, supposed great philosophers of ancient Greece were around already at this time. Why didn't they come? Where's the Aristotle, the Socrates, okay, it's a little early for them, but where are all the great people? There's only Yitro came? Why? What did he hear that was so amazing to him? So what did he hear? Says Rashi, Kriyat Yamsuf. He heard about the splitting of the sea, Umilchemet Amalek, and the war with Amalek. In other words, he heard two of the events of last week's parsha. He didn't hear about the man. He didn't hear about the 10 plagues, or maybe he did, but they didn't inspire him for whatever reason. This inspired him, the fact that the sea was split and that the war against Amalek. Now, there are a number of, like I said, a number of commentaries who deal with not only this question that Rashi asked, but who also deal, as super commentaries that they deal with Rashi's comment. And they want to know, why does Rashi pick on these two? And by the way, we know, I hope by now we know, that Rashi hardly ever gives his own opinion on things. This is not just Rashi saying this from, just his imagination. He's quoting, and here he's quoting the Mechilta of Rabbi Yishmael. It says in the Safari sheet right there, and he's quoting from the Gemara in Zvachim. Happens to be, there's other things that are written in those Gemaras too, and the Gemara in the Midrash also. These aren't the only two reasons given, but this is what Rashi quotes. Other commentaries take question why Rashi only quotes these two, but whatever. Let's leave it at this. Let's find out why Rashi thinks that these two reasons are the reasons why Yitro came to Moshe. We'll look at the commentary of the Ketav Sofer, who is the grandson of the Chatam Sofer, and the Rebbe of Chaim David Sonnenfeld, a great Talmud Chacham. We've quoted him before. Just to give you a historical context, he's writing in the late 1800s, so about 150 years ago. So again, he says Vishma Yitro Hule. He quotes the pasuk. He quotes Pirush Rashi. He quotes the commentary of Rashi. Mashmu Shemova Kriyat Yamsuf Milchemet Amalek. So that's where we're up to. That's our question. But Tzarech Lechavin, we have to understand. The Kativ Ki Hotzi Hashem. Why does it have to say that Hashem took them out? Hazeh Haya Mukdam. That should have been first. And why does it say in the verse that? Why does it say in the Rashi? Sorry, not in the verse. Now we're being meduyak. We're being careful about the language that Rashi uses. Rashi says an interesting phrase. He said, "Mashmua shma uva." What did he hear that he heard and came? Which is very wordy for Rashi, by the way. You could have just said Mashmua or Mashma uva. What did he hear and come? Or Lama Shema, Lama Ba, why did he come? But he's very, very wordy for Rashi standards. He gives 4 words where he could have said much fewer. So Rashi is not usually like that. So we have to explain why he says that. Hine Katuv Ramban the Parshat B'Shalach. He quotes he paraphrases the Ramban Nachmanides in Parshat B'Shalach. It's from Hayu Ki Hashem Asa Kol HaMoftim LaAnish LeFaro. There were people who said that all of the things that happened in Egypt, all the things that happened in Mitzrayim, all of those things, all of the 10 plagues, they were all punishments for the behavior of Paro. Which makes sense, by the way, just logically. Paro misbehaved, he deserved a punishment, so the 10 plagues came. And objectively speaking, in other nations, even not considering the Torah for a moment, it could make sense that other people thought it was unjust how Paro treated the Jews. He didn't just enslave them. He didn't just trick them into slavery, which is bad enough. He enslaved them. He harassed them. He terrorized them. He killed their babies. That's terrible, objectively. Not even looking at the Torah standard of things, which is, of course, this is wrong, but just objectively speaking, the international community could have reasoned that Paro was misbehaving. And when the 10 plagues occurred, they could logically assume that that's just a punishment for his bad behavior. That might be what also says the Ketav Sofer. That might also be what Yitro was thinking. Kilule kain ko hakara lahem mikra lo tov b'derech al yidei Shem. So because of his terrible behavior, that's why all these things happen, why all the 10 plagues happen. Vayomer. And it says, Ki Yitro gam kain kishma kishashama kol asher asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim sabur haya ki hayala anush leparo. He might have thought that this is just a punishment for Paro too. He might have agreed with the international community, with the United Nations of the time. Moshe midat atzma hotzi, and then Moshe had his obviously his own opinion. Aval kishishma kriyat yamsuf umelchamet hamalek as nigla lo lemafreya ki hayal hakol me'et Hashem letovat Yisrael. When he heard about, not that just the 10 plagues. 10 plagues is maybe a punishment for Paro, but when he heard about the splitting of the sea, which was not just a punishment to Paro, because you could punish Paro and still hurt the Jews. But the Jews went out safely through the Red Sea, through the Reed Sea, and the Egyptians were punished. That's true. But then there's Melchamet Amalek. And Melchamet Amalek had nothing to do with Mitzrayim. And if it had nothing to do with Mitzrayim, that means Hashem wasn't just punishing Egypt. That means everything that happened, Amalek and the Yamsuf, and go all the way back to the 10 plagues, everything that happened wasn't just punishment for Paro, like the world might have thought at the time. Everything was Letovat Yisrael, for the good of the Jews. And that's what he heard. And that's what inspired Yitro to go to the Jewish people and maybe even convert and become Jewish himself, as most commentaries explain. Because that's when you realize that Hashem isn't just Elohim, this violent, powerful force that just punishes. Hashem is also this loving God who saved the Jewish people because he chose them to do his will. And as such, the war of Amalek and the splitting of the sea is not just a punishment for Egypt. The war of Amalek had nothing to do with Egypt. That's what caused Yitro to come. That's a very, very powerful lesson. In other words, he realized Hashem loves the Jews. If only we would realize that as much as he realized that. Hashem loves us, He chose us. He loves us. He chose us to do a very important thing. To add to that, I want to read to you the commentary of the Chidah in Nachal Kedumim on another pasuk later on in verse 18:8. Not so much later, 7 verses later. The Nachal Kedumim. Is there a question? I heard it. All right. He says that let me see exactly the source here. He quotes Reb Chaim Vital, first of all, one of the main students of the Arizal. He quotes him saying that the Egyptians, similarly, they might have thought Shaya Siyata Dishmaya Kikol Hamakot and Niflot Asa Hashem. They could have thought that everything that Hashem did, Bishvil Shaparo Hataris. He said that maybe they're just punishing Paro. Maybe that's what all the 10 plagues were for. Amar lo yadati at Hashem ki mi Hashem. He said, I don't know who this God is. Why should I let the Jewish people go? So maybe that's why he was punished. Maybe that's why there were the 10 plagues. Maybe this is some sort of revenge of Hashem for Paro's chutzpah. So, but the truth is that Hashem performed all the miracles, all the 10 plagues and everything else, not for the sake of Paro, not only for the sake of Paro, but because of the Jewish people. Same idea. In other words, it's not just a punishment for Paro that all this happened, but it's also a reward it's also to show his love for the Jewish people. And that's what it means in the verse, because there's a verse that he's commenting on that says, and Moshe told his father-in-law all that Hashem did to Paro and to the Egyptians concerning Yisrael. So in other words, because of Yisrael, he did this because of Yisrael, not because of the Jewish people. Al Odot Yisrael Davka, specifically for the Jewish people, is why Hashem did this, not just to punish Paro, but also to show his love for the Jewish people. Important, critical comment. One of the most important ideas that we have in Judaism is that this idea that we have to have that Hashem loves us and takes care of us. Okay, so now that we started, let's get into the next verse we're going to learn today is verse 18, so chapter 18, verse 16. So very interesting grammatical point. Very interesting grammatical point that I'd like to bring to your attention. One of the reasons that this is interesting is because very often we have these ideas about the ancient peoples. Oh, they're just like us. They just like ancient, but really they behave just like we do. I want to show you something that the Malbim points out in brilliant analysis of the language used in this verse. So chapter 18, verse 16 is talking about this tour. Sorry, give me a second. The tour that Moshe showed Yitro what was going on. And Yitro saw that Moshe was sitting and judging all the people, right? And the verse says, Ki yelahem davar ba Eli. Moshe is telling him that when they have a dispute, when they have an argument about who owes whom what, right? What kind of, somebody might have, somebody's not sure whose, I don't know, orchard or tree or a basket of fruit or whatever it is, or animal. They could have some sort of dispute, like regular legalistic dispute. So they come to him. And I judge between a man and his fellow. And then I let them know what the law is and what Hashem has taught. Pretty simple, right? You would think that there's no real grammatical issues with this verse, the way I translated it. However, we need to look a little more carefully at the grammar. And this is why it's important to look at the words and why a translation never, ever, ever really suffices when it comes to Torah. Let's look at the verse. Ki yelahem davar, when they have an issue, when they have a thing, ba elai. Ba elai means he comes to me, or it comes to me. That's how that's how it's translated in Safaria, meaning the ba is going on the davar, on the thing. But the Malbim says it a little bit differently. So when they have an argument, he comes to me. Who's he? Good question. So let's look at the Malbim. So Malbim says lahem, right? So when they have an argument, Rosaloma Hadavar ba ilai hayinu hamitziin tanutehem lifanai mizeh ashpot ben ish ben rehud. I judge between them, these people. There's an argument here. Anashim tzadikim. These people were righteous. They weren't like regular people nowadays. They were super righteous people. Kishiyesh b'nehem safek b'dimnei mamamot. When they have some sort of doubt about legalistic things, about who owns what. Who atzlam ke'ein sha'alag b'dinei isur v'heter. He himself comes to me. Ki hu safek isur gazal. It's a doubt whether he stole or not. I don't need to hear it from both of them. One of them comes to me. One of them is coming to me to tell me that he thinks he might have stolen from somebody. Not that he thinks that he's been stolen from. He's in doubt whether he stole. By a lie, one person comes to me. This is what the people were like back then. They wouldn't wait for somebody else to take them to court. They would come to court if they had a doubt about the property. Moshe, tell me what to do. I have a cell phone in my hand. I'm not sure whose it is. Is it mine or is it my friend's? When there's a doubt in law between them, he comes to me. The actual who would be the defendant, the possible defendant, he comes to me to tell me he feels guilty about what he did. That's the kind of people we're talking about. This is so critical in understanding Torah because we have so many verses, so many times we have in the Psukim and the stories, even earlier in Bereshit, we had stories Yehuda and Tamar, and we look at these stories, and if we're just judging them based on what we understand about ourselves and about our world, the world around us, so yeah, these are just perverts. Yeah, these are, look at these disgusting stories. But the fact is, we're judging them wrongly because we don't understand what kind of people these were. These are the kinds of people who, when they have something in their own possession, they go to court to accuse themselves of thievery. That's the kind of people we're talking about. Once you understand that, then you go back to the earlier stories. And then you go, wait a minute. So there must be something deeper going on. Oh, that must be why Chazal said what they said about Yehuda. Why Chazal said what they said about Reuven. These are not just stories based on our life and on our stories and the baggage we carry. These are stories of truth, and these are stories from Hashem's perspective, and so we need to learn it from that angle. Okay, let's go on. We've spent quite a bit of time with this particular verse. Let's these two verses. Let's go right into. Might as well. We're about halfway through the class. Let's get into the Ten Commandments. That is the major, obviously the major focus of this week's parsha. I believe it's the sixth Aliyah, where the Ten Commandments, the Aseret HaDibrot are given, and we have the first version of the Ten Commandments. When I say version, I don't mean that there's a New Testament version or whatever. God forbid. in Devarim there is also 10 commandments, and there are certain differences and certain similarities, and we say, Chazal tell us, that both were given at the same time, and Hashem has the miraculous ability, which should not surprise us, to say more than one thing at the same time, and for both of those things to be heard and understood at the same time. Now, you might think to yourself, oh, that's okay. I listen to music and I listen to a lecture and I'm doing the dishes at the same time. I multitask too. That's a little bit different. And you're probably not listening to the words of the lyrics if you're also listening to the words of the lecture, right? If there's lyrics in the music you're listening to. You can't really concentrate fully on both. I mean, there are certain things you can multitask on, but usually not as when we multitask, we don't usually do as good of a job as we would if we concentrated on one thing at a time. It's one of those facts in life. Okay, so let's look at the. Oh, did I bring the right verse? 1 second. Yeah, perfect. All right, good. All right, so Hashem introduces himself in the 10 commandments, and this is the first commandment, which is that we have to believe in Hashem. It doesn't say it that way. It doesn't say thou must believe in the God. Right? You must believe in me. Instead, what does it say? It says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God, Asher hotziticha me'eretz Mitzrayim, who took you out from the land of Egypt, mibeit avadim, from the house of slavery. Okay. Famous question. Many, like I said, many commentaries dwell on this. And we're first going to look at, we have 3 comments on this verse asking basically the same question. The question is, Hashem has done a lot of things in the history of the world. In fact, he's done everything. He's created the world, right? So, if you want to tell me how great Hashem is, Anochi Hashem, who created the world. I am God who lets you live. I am God who created the universe. Why this particular thing? Why that I took you out of Egypt? Now, there are a number of answers, some better than others. Many good answers, probably most of them true, if not all. But I'd like to share with you at least a summary of 3 major comments on this. The first is from the Ibn Ezra. We're going to look at the Ibn Ezra, then we're going to look at Rabbi Yehuda Halevi in his Kuzri, and we're going to then look at the Ramban, all answering this same question. Why is Hashem saying he's the one who took us out of Egypt instead of the creator of the universe, etc.? So the Ibn Ezra begins, or more or less begins. It's a little bit into his commentary already. It's a long piece, as you can see if you're at home looking at the screen right now. It's one of the longest, if not the longest, Ibn Ezra comments in the entire Torah commentary, as far as I know. I'm not a big expert in Ibn Ezra, but it's the longest one that I'm familiar with. And but it's a very lengthy piece. I'm just going to summarize it best I can, and then you're invited to go back and look at the text on your own. The Ibn Ezra says, let's start with the introduction to his question is already great because it introduces, it's like segues into the next comment. Anyway, Sha'alni Rabbi Yehuda Halevi Nuchati Kavod. So he says that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi asked him, and he should be honored. Lama hiskir anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotziticha me'eretz Mitzrayim v'lo amar she'atiti shamayim va'aretz. So Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, who wrote the Kuzri, so he asked the Ibn Ezra specifically, why is it that that Hashem introduces himself this way and not as the creator of the heavens and the earth? And he tried to give an answer. V'zot hayta tshuvati alav. This is what I answered him. And so now let's basically summarize. We can says the Ibn Ezra, we can, if we really try to, we can prove that Hashem exists just from nature. The world, the universe testifies, and I've spoken about this in numerous different contexts. The universe itself testifies to the existence of God. There has to be a God. It's impossible, he says, with all the different variety of creatures, animals, vegetables, minerals, right? Everything, how the human body works. Remember, the Ibn Ezra was a doctor, right? It's impossible that there isn't a God, right? It's just like the complicated nervous system that he didn't even know about, right? They didn't study nerves the way we do nowadays, right? The amount of impulses in our muscles and everything, everything is so amazing about the human body. Everything's so perfect in the world. There's gravity and there's a gravitational pull from Jupiter that keeps us from flying into the sun. Yeah, everything is just so perfect. And if the Earth was 1 centimeter closer to the sun, we wouldn't have enough coolness to exist. We'd all burn. It's amazing. Amazing. And Ibn Ezra couldn't have known, didn't have the language to explain it this way. But, says the Ibn Ezra, that's if you study these things, right? If you don't study astronomy, if you don't study the human body, if you're not a doctor like the Ibn Ezra was, you don't know all of these details. And so that gives, unfortunately, that gives apikursim, those people who want to take Hashem away from us, it gives them something to stand on. And in terms of that, so saying, I am Hashem, your God, who created the heavens and the earth, somebody can say, oh, but I can disprove that. The heaven and the earth thing, that could have happened from some giant, explosion of chemicals that somehow appeared from out of nowhere. I can explain that away. Don't worry about that. So there can be people who say that, even in Ibn Ezra's time. So how do you prove that there is a God? So to the common man, to the experts, to the scholars, okay, fine, great, they got it. How do you explain this to the common man who doesn't study astronomy and botany and these things? How do you teach them? How do you prove to them that the universe testifies about God? You know how? He took you out of Egypt. You were just there. You Jewish people. Who is he talking to? He's not talking to people who heard the story at the Pesach Seder like we did. He's talking to people who were there. And these people were there. So it's the much stronger proof that there's a God, because he literally took you out of Egypt. You were there. You saw it with your own eyes. It's a known fact. It's not just, a story, some myth, some story in a book. It happened to you. That's what the Ibn Ezra says. That's the main proof he has that the Jewish people were taken out of Egypt, is the greatest proof of the fact that Hashem is Hashem, that there is a God for the common person. And for, of course, those of us who like to study other things, of course, we have plenty of other proofs of the fact that there's a God, and that's for another time. So that's the Ibn Ezra's long piece here. And then I want to say, of course, who did he get this question from? He got the question from Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, who wrote the Kuzri. So Rabbi Yehuda Halevi has his own answer after, I guess, I'm assuming, after he asked the Ibn Ezra this question. So in the Kuzri, in the very, very beginning, in part 1 of the Kuzri, section 25, oh my gosh, there's a lot to read here in the Sefaria source sheet, by the way. You could just look for it because I wasn't able to send it out. It's 0205. That's the 5th parsha in the 2nd book of the Torah, 5782, YISD. You can look it up in the Sefaria thing. Anyway, or just follow me and you'll find it either way. Anyways, the Kuzri, section 1, part 25. The rabbi says, Ahaderech hazeh v'hishvita kasher shaltani. This is the sort of like this is sort of like in the middle of a conversation, but he says, this is what I answered you before. In other words, what the Kuzri had just said was that he wants to praise sorry so he says like this. It's a little bit down here. V'chein patach Elokim devarav al hamon Yisrael. This is how Hashem opened his words of the Ten Commandments to the Jewish people. This is the first time he's speaking to the entire Jewish people, right? Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotziticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. V'lo amar ani borei ha'olam u'varachem. He didn't say I created the world and everything that's in there. V'chein patachti lecha melech hakuzar kasher she'altani al amunati. And this is exactly how the king of the Kuzi, the Khazar king, asked me the same question. Hashivaticha masha ani chayav bo v'chayavim bo kol kahal Yisrael. So the whole conditioning, the whole way that the Jewish people felt responsible to Hashem is because of what he did for them. He rescued them out of Egypt. That's why he is their God. He is our God because he rescued us out of Egypt. Let's make it much more personal, right? When you ask about why we believe what we believe, there are a number of answers, that we could give. My parents believe this. This is what I was taught. It could go on and on. But the main reason why we believe what we believe about Hashem is because that's what Hashem told us. After he took us out of Egypt. He took us out of Egypt. He told us what to do. And that's the basis of our faith. If we don't have that, we don't have much else. We don't have much else at all. Without the Torah, Judaism is a very, how should you say, a very weak group of people, right? Where Judaism, or not even just group of people, it's a very weak philosophy. We don't really have much to hold on to without the Torah that Hashem gave us, and without the fact that he rescued us from Egypt. Oh, good. The Safari there has the English there too, so you can look at that at your convenience. Let's see how much of the Ramban we'll be able to get to. Also, a long piece of Ramban. But we're, again, not going to get through all of it. We're just going to summarize it briefly. The Ramban says, first of all, that this is, so he starts with, what am I looking at? So he says that the reason why he says that Hashem took us out of Egypt, and not just because he created the world, because ki hotzati oto misham Torah al mitziut ve'al hachefetz, because his taking us out demonstrates the fact that he actually exists, and it shows his desire. It shows what he cares about, because he's done a lot of things. He's done a lot of things for the whole universe, every single nation, every single group. He sustains the life of every single blade of grass. Okay, that's true. But he cares about a unique group also, a specific group, and that's the Jewish people. Just like the Ketav Sofer wrote earlier, like and the Chidah, that Hashem has a deep, deep love for the Jewish people. That's why we have the Ten Commandments. 10 Commandments aren't just a random list of laws. Hashem wants us to know that it is because of his love for us that he's given us these laws. right? Because he just like nature has its laws, and by following those laws, nature can be successful, right? Trees grow, fruits drop, right? All of these things are normal parts of nature, and they make nature successful. There's a whole ecosystem that fits perfectly like a puzzle piece. So too, our behaving the way Hashem wants us to, that's our natural law. Our natural law, even though it's sometimes against our nature to do some of the mitzvot, right? But Hashem's desire for us to do the mitzvot, and when we do it completely and successfully, that's when we know that we're fitting into that puzzle of creation. We're making that creation a complete picture. That's why it's important to know that Hashem took us out of Egypt, because that's the basis of our faith in Hashem. And the Ramban says that also. We learned this last year when we were learning Parshat Bishalach. The famous Ramban at the end of Parshat Bishalach talks about that as well. All right, now we're going to have two questions about this next verse. We're going to skip to chapter 20, verse 14. And we're going to focus on one particular mitzvah, a very difficult mitzvah to explain. We've talked about this in different contexts in the past as well, so definitely worthwhile to look over it again. And that is the mitzvah, the commandment to lo tachmod bet re'echa, to not covet the house of your fellow. Lo tachmod eshet re'echa, and don't obviously covet the wife of your fellow. V'avdo, and don't covet his slave. V'amato, and his maidservant. V'shoro, and his ox. V'chamoro, and his donkey. V'chol asher l're'echa, and everything that belongs to your fellow. Do not covet. Do not want it. That's a very, very, very interesting mitzvah. Before we get into how do you do that, how do you command somebody to do that or not do that, let's look at something very, very interesting. A 15th century Kabbalist by the name of Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh de Modena. So he wrote a work called Lev HaAryeh, very deep work. At the very, very end of it, he has a list of the 613 mitzvot, and he attaches them all to the 613 letters of the Aseret HaDibrot up until this point. So from Anochi Hashem Elokecha until this verse, Lo Tachmod, you have 613 letters. 613 letters, exactly Taryag letters up until this point anyway. And those are the 613 mitzvot. Beautiful, beautiful. Why are we stopping at this verse, though? Wouldn't it be nice if, like, all 10 commandments equaled 613 letters? So what's going on? So he says, brilliant. Very, very end of Lev Aryeh, very like last page. Okay? He said Lev HaAryeh, I should say. And I tried to bring a copy of the text here. It's a little hard to read. I apologize. It's an ancient work. That's going to be my excuse for everything now. So he says like this. He says that this verse has the first 7 letters, not first 7, the 7 letters of sorry, which letters? Asher l'reyecha. Right? The last 7 letters. Well, hold on. I'm sorry. I take that back. I said this wrong. Let's delete that from the file. Okay. He says until the last 2 words of this verse, Asher l'reyecha, all the 10 commandments. The 10 commandments from Anochi Hashem Elokecha until Asher l'reyecha, till these last 7 letters. So that's 613 letters. Okay. Then so together with these is 620. So what are we going to do? Oh no, we don't have We don't have 613 letters in the 10 commandments. We have 620. That's too many. He says those 7 are a reference to the 7 mitzvot of the rabbis that count like the oraita mitzvot. Remember, the rabbis gave us 7 extra mitzvot that are on the level of Torah law. Which 7? So he says you can see from the letters of these 7 letters, you can see from the letters themselves hints to the 7 mitzvot of the rabbis that are on the level of Torah mitzvot. And those 7 letters are: Asher is Aleph, Shin, Resh. L'Reyecha is Lamed, Resh, Ayin, Bet. Chaf. Sorry. Okay, and he says, so the Aleph is or, so Ner Chanukah, right? Chanukah is one of the 7 mitzvot of the rabbis. Shin is Shabbat, the Shabbat candles, Nerot Shabbat. Resh is for Rina, that's Kriyat Hallel, saying Hallel. That's a rabbinic law that has a Torah, it's on the Torah level. Kriyat Lamed is Kriyat Megillah, the Purim, reading the Megillah on Purim, as we're going to have, God willing, in the next 2 weeks or so, 2 months. Sorry, didn't mean to get you scared there. And Reish Rechitza is Tilat Yadayim, so washing your hands. Ayin is for Eruvin. So, this is the machloket, whether that's a rabbinic law or whether that's a rabbinic law or a Torah law, but even if it's a rabbinic law, it's on the level of Torah law. Ubirchatecha, that's the chaf, that's the blessings such as Birkat HaMazon and other blessings that are considered Torah law, like that. So that's another rabbinic law that has Torah level responsibility, and those are, in other words, all 613 mitzvot and the 7 rabbinical mitzvot are hinted to in the Aseret HaDibrot. Beautiful. All right, so that's it's a beautiful little comment there. Now, it's time to ask the big question. The big question, we deal with this almost every year, and it's worth talking about. How can the Torah legislate? How can the Torah legislate jealousy? Don't be jealous. Don't want what somebody else has. You know, I see a nice car driving by, and I want that car. Am I breaking the law? I'd like a car like that. I don't want his car. Maybe if I dislike the guy just because he has a car I want, maybe that's, already not so good. So how do we understand this? So lo tachmod, what does that mean? So we're going to first look at the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra's comment is he gives a famous mashal. So he says, "Anashim rabim itmahu al zot mitzvah." Many people ask me about this. It's interesting. Ibn Ezra doesn't usually talk like this. It's interesting. In the last both of the comments we have from him tonight, he's talking about people asking him questions. Anyway, many people ask, like, they're very confused by this mitzvah. Adam shelo yachmo davar yafe. Believe in your heart, a lot of people want something nice. So what's how do you legislate that? How do you tell people not to want something that they want? How is that a sin? So he says, "Ata aten lecha mashal." I'm going to give you I'll give you a mashal. I'll give you a metaphor, a story, and extended metaphor is called an allegory. He's giving you an allegory. Okay, so here's your English lesson for the day. There's a princess, and she's going through a country, and she goes into the small villages, and a simple villager who sees her, is he going to think, "Oh man, I wish I could marry the princess"? No, he says. No, it would never enter, especially in the times of monarchies. It would never enter your imagination that you'll ever have a chance with the princess. Silly villager, you have no chance. You are not in the same league. You're never going to get a chance to marry her. She will never look at you like you're even a potential mate, right? There's no way. You might be the last two people alive in the world, and you still don't have a chance, right? Because she's going to be looking for royalty. She'll spend her last days looking for a prince to marry, right? There's no way she's going to settle for a villager.
I guess Disney didn't get up on that.
No, this is pre-Disney. And by the way, the happens to be the stories that Disney's stories are based on. Even they would agree with this. Usually, when the commoner wants to marry a princess or a prince, they usually have to have yichus also. They have to have some sort of royal blood. Anyway, says the Ibn Ezra, we have to view our lives like that too. We have no chance of getting what somebody else has because Hashem doesn't want us to have that. If it was meant to be ours, guess what? It would be ours. We're not meant for that thing. There's no reason to want somebody else's stuff. If you want somebody else's stuff, that means you're not satisfied with what you have, and that means that you don't realize that you have what Hashem wants you to have. Similarly, says Rav Eliyahu Dessler in Michtav Me'Eliyahu, beautiful way of saying this. Oh wow, Sefaria has a lot here. Great, thank you, Sefaria. All right. So he says that this is in Michtav Me'Eliyahu. Oh, I wish I knew where it was. Yeah, and it's in volume 1, page 136. Volume 1 of Michtav Me'Eliyahu. He says, yeah. So anyway, im chafetz ploni nitein lechavero. If somebody wants to get something from somebody else, biadua shemitayim laavodat chavero v'lo l'shelo. So it's somebody else's. It's not his. Kamo mishkafayim, like glasses. Shenasu lechavero lo yelo l'toilet l'klal. Somebody, what do you want? You want somebody else's glasses? They're not going to help you at all. They're not meant for you. They're not your glasses. They're somebody else's glasses. You can't be jealous of somebody else's glasses. That's what it means to be jealous of somebody else. That's what it means to covet. You think that your life is going to be improved by somebody else's stuff, but the fact is it can't be. It physically can't be because there's somebody else's. They were meant for them. That car you see that you want is meant for the person you see driving it. I don't know why. Maybe it's because he's, God forbid, going to be in a car accident without it. But it's not going to do the same thing for you. You have the car you need. This is not an advertisement, by the way. This is not. All the commercials say otherwise, right? If you turn on the TV, Volkswagen is going to tell you what you need right now is a Volkswagen. Toyota says you need a Toyota. Honda says you need a Honda. Whatever it is, they're trying to trick you out of your money, basically. The most important thing you need to know is that Hashem is giving you what you need. That doesn't mean, by the way, that you shouldn't strive for better if you can and if you think you need it. It doesn't mean you should be driving around in a clunker that's breaking down all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But someone else's car is for someone else. You need a car like that? Great. Go get a car like that if you need it. If you feel you need it, people who you take advice from tell you need it. That's a different story. All right. Let's look at the very, very end of the let's look at chapter 20, verse 20. Real quick, we'll try to fit into the next 2 minutes. We'll try to fit in two very easy, important lessons. See, as you may know, I'm the Rav of a shul. So it's I think the main it doesn't seem like it sometimes, but really the main responsibility of a Rav is tefillah, is davening. That's what a shul is for. So I'd like to give you some lessons about tefillah from this week's parsha. 2 lessons, if I may, very quick, very important lessons. One from Rabbeinu Bachya and one from the Kitzer Bal HaTurim. So in chapter 20, verse 20, it says, Lo tasun iti elokai kesav elokai zahav v'lo tasu lachem. With me, therefore, you don't have any gods of silver nor gods of gold. Don't make any kind of statues or anything else. Don't make these things into statues either. So says Rabbeinu Bachya, very simple. He says, Al derech pshat lo tasun shebetoch oti shum tzura. Don't make shapes of gold and silver. Don't make statues, in other words, is the way it means. But he says, another way you can read it, when you are beside me, right? It means when you're with me, right? Right? Lo tasun iti, with me. What does it mean with me? So he says, with me here means that when you are with me, when you are in tefillah, when you are praying, don't think about your gold and silver. Don't think about your money. Yes, obviously, if you need some, you pray for it, but pray to me for it, Hashem's saying. But don't just focus on that. Don't be like, I'm afraid to say this, but I've actually seen during Shemona Esrei once, somebody took out their wallet and started counting how much money they had in the middle of their Shemona Esrei. Now, it could be they were trying to separate money. Somebody was coming to, in case somebody came to collect. That's also not allowed. You're not supposed to think about your money. You're not supposed to check your pocket to see if your wallet's still there. You're not supposed to think about anything. Focus on tefillah. That's a very important lesson. A difficult lesson sometimes, but very important lesson. And the last lesson, this is very important. I know most of the people in this class are of the fairer sex, of women, but there's an important lesson here about tefillah especially for men. But I think, I think even the women here can help encourage the men to do this. So the last verse.
Offended.
I didn't say all. I said most. All right. So I'm here too. Actually, we bros. All right. Anyway, so Mizbach Adama Tasali, make for me an altar of earth. V'zavachta love, make sacrifices on it. This is the source of the laws of sacrifice, the very beginning. Al olotecha, v'al shalamecha, et tzoncha, v'et bekarecha, v'chol hamakom asher azkir, et shemi avo elecha uverachticha. So you're going to bring your animals, you're going to make sacrifices. And it says, in every place where I cause my name to be heard, that's where I will come and bless you. In other words, you go wherever I tell you, you make sacrifices wherever you make them, and that's where I'm going to bless you. Says the Baal Haturim, Avo, Alecha, I will come to you. Avo, easy gematria. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Vav 6, 1, Aleph 1 again. That's 6 plus 4. That's 10. Avo Ola Asara. Lomar She'im Emtza Yud Beit HaKnesset Avo Elecha Uvirachticha. When I come to when I see 10 men in your shul, when I see a minyan, that's when I'm going to bless you. That's when you can say all the special blessings that only can be said when there's a minyan. The Kaddishes, the Kedushas, the Baruch Hu, the Torah reading, all of that can happen when there's a minyan. We've been struggling, many shuls, by the way, have been struggling lately with minyanim. And many people have wondered, why aren't we so blessed? What's happened? Why does it feel like everything's just going down the tubes? Maybe it's connected, says the Baal HaTurim. Maybe there's a relationship. Maybe perhaps if Hashem came to shul and saw a minyan there, maybe we'd be blessed. Avo elecha uverachticha. We have many, many rules, Baruch Hashem, because Hashem loves us so much. And he gives us opportunities to be blessed. And that's one of them, is to make sure that there's a minyan. When there's a minyan, Hashem will bless us, and we'll continue to see only success and happy times and good things for all of us. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to stop the recording.